So thank you for joining this session. My name is Megan Columbus. I am the Communications Director in NIH's Office of Extramural Research. I'll be moderating this session. And this is actually, the session is on using RePORT to understand who and what NIH funds. And I have to say, RePORT is such a fabulous tool. It really, I get very energized by it because it's really all about NIH's commitment to transparency. And so we want to show you how you can use this tool to understand how you fit within NIH's funding and really who NIH is funding. So I have with me today Cindy Danielson and Calvin Jackson. Calvin is going to be in the background answering some Q&As while Cindy is going to be giving the presentation. So with that, Cindy, take it away.
Thank you, Megan. And I'm happy to be with you virtually today, along with Calvin in the background, to help you become aware of some tools that can help you understand who and what NIH funds and use this information as you're planning your grant application. Broadly, the goals for this talk are for you to become familiar with the NIH funding information available in the RePORT web tools to help target your application, find key contacts at the NIH and in the grantee community, and find other information and resources to help you navigate through the grants process. There are many questions you may have throughout the grants process, and I'll show you some tools that can help answer some of these questions. We'll cover the ones listed here. What is the NIH already funding in my research area? What results came out of those projects? Which ICs have priorities that align with my research ideas? How can I find relevant point of contact at NIH to discuss my research ideas? How can I find collaborators? What are other PIs at my institution working on? Which types of programs should I apply for? And what are my chances of getting funded? With that, let's start looking at some of the tools that can help you answer these questions. NIH is known for its transparency about the investments it makes in biomedical research, and the one-stop shop for this information is the RePORT website. Combined on this site are a variety of tools to help the public understand the investments that NIH makes by making it easy to find reports, data, and analyses of NIH research activities. There are multiple tools on the RePORT website offering data at multiple levels of complexity. The tools available here include the Reporter module, where you can find details about individual funded grant awards, the Matchmaker tool, where you can enter any scientific text to find similar projects from Reporter, and program officials overseeing those similar projects. The Awards by Location tool that gives you snapshots of where funding is going each year. The Categorical Spending tables displaying annual funding amounts for various research, condition, and disease categories. And the NIH Data Book, which provides summary statistics, including funding trends and success rates over time. In the past year, we launched modernized versions of both the overall RePORT site and the searchable Reporter module, which offer faster and easier access to the same data that have been available on the old sites for the past decade. I'll take you on a tour of each of these tools today to show you how they can be helpful as you're developing your application. I'll start off by showing you how to use one tool, Reporter, to help as you're developing your application. You can find funded research projects in areas similar to yours to see what's been funded already and to get additional background information on prior research. You can also identify potential collaborators you might be interested in working with and find projects awarded earlier under funding opportunity announcements, similar to the one you'll be using for your application. The tool you can use to answer all of these questions is Reporter, which is the most popular tool available on the RePORT website. The acronym is similar to RePORT, but with an extra ER at the end. That stands for expenditures and results, because you can find funding information and publications and other project results here. In addition to projects funded by the NIH, Reporter also includes projects funded by several other federal agencies within the Department of Health and Human Services and the VA. The new version of the searchable Reporter tool offers multiple ways to search through projects funded by NIH and several other agencies. One new feature we've added is the quick search, where you can enter multiple keywords into a single box that will automatically query across multiple fields and return the most relevant results. For example, I can enter something like Lauer Cleveland Clinic 2005, and Reporter will know I'm looking for an investigator name, an organization, and a fiscal year. If you don't have a particular search in mind, new interactive charts let you jump right into projects based on location or institute or center. And for those who prefer to precisely define what you're after, you can use the advanced project search form to find exactly what you need. You'll see just the most popular search fields in the mini version of the search form, but if you want to use additional options beyond fiscal year, principal investigator, organization, agency, institute, center, or project number, just click the All Search Fields button to expand to the full search form that includes all of the same search fields you may be familiar with from the old version of Reporter. If you're unfamiliar with the particular search field, hover over the question mark icon next to it to find out more about how to use it. For example, you can hover over the fiscal year search field to see that the default search is for active projects, which means projects within their current budget period. If you're interested in projects that are no longer active, you can adjust this to go as far back as 1985. No matter how you choose to set up your search, once it runs, you'll see the list of projects matching your search criteria. Key details such as project number, project title, PI name, organization, and funding information are presented right on the screen. But you can click the hyperlinks to view more details such as the abstract, contact information, dates, and other administrative details. In addition to information about the projects, Reporter also connects these projects to results that they supported. For example, just click on the Publications tab on the search results page to explore publications that cited support from projects on that first list of projects. If you've configured a search that you'd like to run again or share with a colleague, you can click the Share button to bring up a persistent URL that you can click at any time. Each time that's clicked, the search will be run again and updated results presented. Now I've switched over to the RePORT website, where you can see the most popular tools are located right at the top. And right from this RePORT homepage, you can use the Reporter Quick Search to jump into results. I'm entering the word Julius and clicking search. And I can see we have a lot of results, 716 to be precise. If I want to narrow this down, I can add in the word San Francisco, if I know that's where this investigator is located. And if that's still too many, I can enter a keyword. So let's enter capsaicin, since I know that's the topic I'm looking for. And then this can help narrow it down to a shorter list of projects of interest. I also want to point out the filters available on the left side of the screen, where I can use these to very quickly and easily narrow down by fiscal year, organization, funding agencies, and other details. I'm just going to click on active projects, and this will really narrow my list down to a project that is within its currently active budget period. And from this list, you can click on an individual project of interest and then take a look and see why that project matched my search criteria, view some additional details, contact information for the investigator, funding amounts, publications that have come out of that, and lots of other details there as well. But if you already know what you're looking for, rather than using the quick search, you might prefer to use the advanced project search form. This is where you can precisely define what you're looking for using separate search fields. For example, if you've already identified a relevant funding opportunity announcement and want to see what kind of projects have already been funded under similar announcements. Let's imagine you're interested in applying to PAR 21080, which focuses on addressing the etiology of health disparities and health advantages among immigrant populations. Looking at the announcement details in the guide here, we can see that this is actually a reissue of a previous announcement, PA 17041. So let's take a look in Reporter and see what similar research has been funded previously. So in Reporter, to get to the full advanced search form, you can just scroll down, and it starts off by showing you the abbreviated search form, which catches most of what people are looking for, but you can just click the button at the bottom to expand to see everything. For our particular example, I'm going to adjust the default search, which is only for active projects, and select all because this announcement was put out a few years ago and we want to see everything, even if it's no longer active. And then I'm going to scroll down and look for the FOA search field. And it tells you right below it the format that you should use. So I'm going to type in PA-17-041. And let's run the search. And very quickly here, we can see that there's a list of 30 projects that were funded under this previous announcement. And again, just as I showed before, you can click through any of these projects to view information about the focus of that project. And if you want to see what results have already come out of that to know what might be a good starting point to cover in your own application, you can click the Publications tab at the top. So going back to the slides, I also want to mention an even easier way to keep tabs on the latest funded projects and results without having to run repeated searches. You can do this with a feature called My Reporter, which is a logged-in version of Reporter. You'll need a login.gov account to sign in, where you can save your searches and get automated email alerts whenever there are new projects, publications, or news items matching your search. These email alerts make it easy to stay up to date on current projects while you're working on your application. You just need to sign up once, then sit back and check your inbox each week. Now I want to show you another way to search Reporter, where you can start with any scientific text that is meaningful to you, and then find similar research. This can help you figure out what projects like yours have already been funded, and who at the NIH you can contact to discuss your research ideas. The way this tool works is that you can enter an abstract or any other scientific text, and Matchmaker will pull out the scientific terms and concepts from your text and compare them to the terms and concepts in funded projects in Reporter. The tool will return a list of those similar projects or a list of program officials associated with those projects. Here's an example where I'm starting with the researcher's description of her lab. Just paste this text into the box and decide whether you'd like to see a list of similar projects or similar program officials. When you click search, Matchmaker will analyze your text and find the best matches in Reporter. In addition to the list of the most similar projects in Reporter, you'll see visual summaries of the institutes and centers, activity codes, and study sections associated with these projects, which can help you plan those details of your application. You can also view the NIH program officials who oversee the science most like yours, making it easy to find a relevant point of contact to discuss your research ideas early on in the process while you're beginning to work on your application. Now I want to shift gears and point out some other resources that can help you understand what NIH funds and where your research fits in. The NIH Awards by Location tool is a quick way to find which of your colleagues have expertise or infrastructure in a particular area. Maybe you want to collaborate with them on your project or get access to some equipment or reagents that are just down the hall. Just click on an organization's name to view their NIH awards or see the list of PIs leading those projects. You can use this tool to explore funding at your own organization or someone else's. Unlike Reporter, which is updated every weekend to always show you the most current information, Awards by Location uses frozen data to serve up consistent information for past fiscal years. You can use this tool to view year-by-year funding by organization, school, department, or more. Another one of the more popular tools on the RePORT website is the NIH Data Book, which is an interactive data dashboard summarizing long-term trends and statistics about NIH research funding. You can explore the charts and data here to answer questions like, what are my chances of getting funded if I submit my application under a particular grant program? Or how likely is it that the institute or center, considering my application, will fund it based on the percentile it received in review? Here are just a few examples of the trends and statistics you can find here, from the average funding amounts awarded to research project grants, to success rates for different types of grants, to summary data for the number of PIs by race, ethnicity, and disability. Just type a keyword into the search to easily find the data you're looking for. For more funding figures, you can view the categorical spending report that provides levels of NIH funding over time for hundreds of research area, conditions, and diseases. You can quickly scan the visual and tabular summaries of funding levels for hundreds of categories going back to fiscal year 2008, or drill down on any of those numbers to view the list of projects that make up that category. With that crash course on what you can find with the NIH RePORT suite of tools, let's make sure we answered all those questions we started with. To find out what the NIH is already funding in your research area, you can run a text search on Reporter. To see what results came out of those projects, use the additional tabs at the top of your Reporter search to view publications, patents, clinical studies, and news articles. To easily find out which institutes and centers have scientific priorities that align with your research ideas, you can enter a description of your research into Matchmaker and then view the chart that summarizes which ICs administer similar projects. To find a relevant point of contact at the NIH to discuss your research ideas, take a look at the similar POs view in Matchmaker. If you're looking to find collaborators, you can use either Reporter or Matchmaker to find NIH-funded investigators working on topics similar to yours. To find out what other PIs at your institution are working on, just click your organization's name in the NIH Awards by Location tool. And finally, if you're considering which types of programs to apply for and want to understand what your chances are of getting funded, take a look at the statistics available in the NIH data book. I also want to point out that while RePORT is the home for data on NIH funding, there's another great resource focused on the application process. The grants.nih.gov website has a wealth of information to guide you through the application process. So you'll want to take a look early on in that process of planning your application. If you have questions on these tools at any time, please reach out to us at report@mail.nih.gov. If you are having trouble finding anything or just aren't sure whether a particular report exists, send us an email. We want to make sure everyone can find what they need and that you have access to the data you need to submit the strongest application. And we will remain live until 2:45. It looks like we'll have plenty of time to take any questions you have from the Q&A interface. We'll try to get to as many as we can.
Great. Thanks for such a great presentation, Cindy. We do have questions for you. And let's see. When we're talking about what awards get published in RePORT and Reporter, is it applications and awards or just awards?
A very good question. It is only awards. So anything that has not been awarded, that's not going to be available out there to the public. Reporter only has those awards.
And what about contracts? Are they handled the same way as grants, and are they available in the system?
Yes, the system does have contracts that have been awarded. They are handled in a different process before they're awarded, but once they are awarded, they are made available through Reporter as well.
And we got some questions obviously NIH and NSF has some intersection in terms of what we're funding. People were wondering if they can find NSF grants in Reporter.
NSF grants are not in Reporter. There is another tool called Federal Reporter, which maintains information, the same information from NIH Reporter, and combines it with information from other federal agencies, including NSF. So that's one tool you might want to take a look at. It's not as current as Reporter because Reporter is updated automatically once a week. Everything in Reporter comes from the same grant system. So Federal Reporter is going to be a bit behind, but depending on your interest, you might want to look at that.
And Federal Reporter reflects, is something that NIH supports. It reflects across agencies, most of the research agencies. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a number of different federal research agencies, including NSF, NASA, some components of DOD, Department of Education, some others as well.
Great, thank you. When we're looking at Matchmaker, how does that algorithm work?
So the algorithm really relies on a thesaurus. We call it the RCDC thesaurus, that categorical spending page I was talking about, where NIH breaks down its spending into roughly 300 or so categories based on scientific focus, disease, and a number of other areas. There's a thesaurus of scientific terminology that's really used to support that process, and it's useful for other reasons as well. So when you enter your text into Matchmaker, it's pulling out any words that exist in the RCDC thesaurus, and then looking within the reporter database to see which other awards in there are matching those terms as well. And that's kind of in a nutshell how that works.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to explain in just a couple sentences, isn't it? There's something I'm trying to kind of pay attention to the chat too, but remember folks, I'm not monitoring the chat. And so please, if you've got a direct question, put it in the Q&A box. But there is a good question that I think collectively we can weigh in on, Cindy, which is if people are looking at this tool to see projects that NIH funds that's like their own, and they see things that are very similar, does that mean they shouldn't do their project? Does that mean, how should they interpret that?
I would say please reach out to program officers early and often. Just because there's research funded on your area doesn't mean that what you're doing has already been done. And really, we do encourage you to, as you're working on your application, reach out to someone. And Matchmaker is one good way. If you aren't aware of who to reach out to, you can find a program officer who oversees a portfolio similar to what you're working on. And I would say that's going to be the best first step of how to determine where your research fits in to what's already been done, which institute or center might support it, and have those conversations.
Good advice. What's the turnaround from the time somebody is awarded a grant, and remember grants are actually awarded to institutions, and when it gets appears on Reporter or Federal Reporter? And I know those are two different answers, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's a very common question. And so I'll start with saying that Reporter is updated once a week. So this happens every weekend. If you say your award becomes active, and I'm talking here about your budget start date. If say your budget start date is on, what day is today? Wednesday. If your budget start date is today and it's just been awarded, then you'll really need to come back on Monday morning and you will expect to see it in Reporter at that time. I will also take this opportunity to mention that because of the way that NIH funds projects, and that you have a competitive period which spans more than 1 year, but then generally each year you'll be issued a non-competing Type 5 award. That means that each of these years is actually a separate record in Reporter. So if you're waiting for your first year of support, if that's ended on Wednesday, and then maybe next week, if there's a gap or for any reason, and next week your award for the support year 2 is going to begin, you might have a little break on Reporter depending on that timing. And each support year is handled in the database as a separate award. But the quick answer to that is Reporter. It's updated every week. So once your award has actually been awarded and then past its budget start date, that's what needs to happen before Reporter will show it. Federal Reporter is a very different process. The NIH awards in there are updated on an annual basis. The other agencies in general are about that range as well. There's different ways that the data get there. So depending on when we're receiving the information or pulling it from other databases, that can lag a little bit. So if you're interested in current information and it's for an agency available in Reporter, Reporter should be your first place to look. Federal Reporter, because it does integrate things from different sources, it does lag behind. So that's really a distinct use case that you'll be looking at that website for.
Sounds good. Can you talk a little bit about, you showed a single query box that's a very smart box that people put their queries in. When people are finding a difference in the answer that they get when they put a query into that single box versus into the advanced query form, can you talk about why there might be differences in what they're finding?
Yeah, great. So very good and common question. The quick search, it does its best to guess what you're looking for. And in some cases, that's very obvious. If something is an investigator's name and it's not anything else, it does its best to say, we think this is an investigator's name. If a particular word is, something that might be found in an award's title, then, that works well. If you have some more ambiguous terms, which maybe the word London could be a location, it could be in an institution's name, it could be an investigator's name, It doesn't do, it doesn't handle those perfectly because it can be so many things. So the quick search is best for really those common queries. If you have something very straightforward, you're looking for a project number or an investigator name, scientific topic even. It's a really quick way to jump in and see what's there. But if you're not getting what you expect, then the advanced project search form really lets you precisely identify what you want. So if you only want to see those cases where it's the location London as opposed to the name London, then make sure to put it in that box. And you just have a lot more flexibility there to define exactly what you want. So it really depends on what you're looking for and your comfortability with things. If you're not, overwhelmed with this long search form, then go about it that way.
So I wonder if you're willing to go live for us so I can ask you to show us a couple of things.
Sounds good.
All right, so some people are asking, can you show them where that advanced search is? Because it's not obvious on the screen where to click and get to it.
Yeah, so let me actually start from RePORT and this is a common point of confusion because RePORT and reporter really sound the same, but that extra E and R does kind of make it a different tool. So RePORT is the entire suite of tools. Reporter is one of those, the most common one, the most popular one, but there's a lot of other things available here. So starting out from the RePORT homepage, we did make it really easy to do that quick search in Reporter right from the homepage, but there's other tools here as well. There's Matchmaker, awards by location, categorical spending, and data book. And you can access all of those here as well as other pages. I'm not going to go into everything today, but there's a ton of information on RePORT. But the specific question is about Reporter. So there's a couple ways to get there. If you're starting from the RePORT homepage, we do have a link to the advanced search form specifically, and that'll take you to a dedicated URL. If you're always using the advanced search, you can bookmark that. My browser auto completes whenever I type in recorder, it knows I'm going to advanced search. Yours might do the same thing. But say you're just on the Reporter homepage, the way this is organized is at the top, we do have that quick search to make it really obvious and really easy to jump into those. Underneath those, we have these interactive widgets where you can jump into projects based on the location of the awardee organization or the administering institute or center. And then if you just scroll down, that's where that advanced project search form is. Now I've already expanded this. Normally you see the mini search, which handles the majority of queries. We look at the usage data, we know what people are looking for. We really wanted to make this easy and just put those most popular ones up front. But if you want to run those more complex searches, just expand that and you will see everything here.
Great. The other thing that people were asking about is, could you show them again that share function? And can you talk about how that share function and whether that reruns the query?
Great. So I'm just going to run a search here and the share. So once you run a search, if you look up over at the top right, you've got a few options here. One is that share button. And when I click that, I'm just going to do the copy link. And then you can take that link, bookmark it, put it in your email, whatever you'd like to do with it. And then you can use that link, put it here. And then every time you run that, it will run the search again. So if I save this link and, maybe I am working on something else and then I want to come back to it as I'm finalizing my application, make sure I hadn't missed anything, I can just run that URL again and it's going to show you the latest results. So if there's something new that wasn't there the first time you run it, this is always going to be a dynamic search.
Perfect. Can you also remind us, we know that there's more than NIH in terms of who's in here, but there's some question about which components of NIH and anybody else is in Reporter.
Sure. So a couple ways to get at that. Well, one, you can just click on that agency, institute, and center within the Reporter search form, and you can take a look. There's, the larger buckets of just NIH and then all of the institutes and centers that are underneath that. And then you can see the other ones in here: Administration for Children and Families, ARC, CDC, FDA, HRSA, and Veterans Affairs. So you can, look at this while you're setting up your search. And there's also, I'll point out, we have some FAQs Again, the link is on the top right here. And there's, some more detailed information in here about what agencies are in here and, well, other common questions we get. So I'll point that out as well.
So I have to say, some people are quite impressed with this tool so far, getting a lot of fantastics and other excitements out there.
Very good to hear.
What about Exporter? Can you talk about how that might be used and what people use it for, given the power that we have already with what's in the tools here?
Yes, I will mention Exporter and then something more newer that we have, the API. So Exporter, what Exporter is, because the reporter database is just so large, there's so much in it, we know that sometimes people are interested in simply looking at everything in the reporter database. It's really not straightforward to just run your reporter searches and do exports because you can only get so many projects at a time. So people are interested in science of science policy type studies. We see they like to use the exporter files because what you can do is just download 1 year at a time. You just click on a CSV file, you get a list of awards from 2020, get a list of awards from 2019, and you can go backwards, well, all the way really even to 1970 if you use some of the legacy files. So this is just a faster way to retrieve the data that underlie Reporter. One difference is that Reporter website is updated once a week. These exporter files, they're static. For the most part, they're created. And then if something changes, it's not going to be reflected in these files. So they're really here for convenience. And so if you are doing a study looking long-term, what has NIH funded, and running your own analysis, you might want to use the exporter files because it's just not simple to get all of this out of Reporter using exports. But the data are, I will say, stale compared to Reporter. It represents a point in time snapshot. So that's the exporter files. I would say that's really their use there. And we've certainly seen some publications, really interesting publications of people using this data. Sometimes they get peer reviewed, really excited to always see those out there. I did want to also mention the API. This is something that we just added when we were modernizing this website. And this is a different case, really, multiple cases. Okay, well, I wait for this API to load. So the API does make available the same information that's in Reporter. It's a different way to get at that information for those of you who are programmatically, apt and want to pull things in rather than downloading them. And there's actually a really nice open mic blog post talking about the API and why you might want to use that. Maybe you can pop the link in the Q&A or chat for people to look at. So the API is another way you can get at this information. It's the same information in Reporter. You're just interacting with it in a different way. We know some people like to pull in the information, put it into their own websites or systems without having to rely on downloading that information.
Great. I'm sorry, I was looking for the link to the open mic. You distracted me there. Can you talk a little bit about subawards, how they're represented? One person happens to be doing an analysis of total funds for their institution received by fiscal year, which I know that we have in RePORT and other ways. But they're having difficulties understanding why for like U and P grant types, occasionally the total costs by IC differs from the total direct and indirect costs, even when they adjust for sub-project costs.
So I think there's really kind of a few questions in there. One, sub-project, another sub-awards, sometimes the same, sometimes different. And then really a third question about the costs. I would say the costs, if the costs don't match up with summing the individual things, that's really a more specific question. Oftentimes we would just say, take a look at your notice of award for more details, contact your grants management specialist to understand where the funds are coming from and how they're split up across your award. I really can't answer that question in one way that's going to work for everyone. But on the sub-projects and sub-awards one, sub-projects, say you have a big P award of some sort and you have the sub-projects. How do I cover this? So we do break down the cost separately for the sub-projects and then for the overall award. Really, most of the time you will have the sum of the individual sub-projects equals the award total cost. So if you're exporting this information, they appear in separate columns so that if you are adding things up, you're not going to double count. But if you have more specific details, please do email us. We're happy to look at specific situations and help you understand that. It's a little hard to answer that abstract one. But the subawards one, I want to address that as well, because a reporter will list the awardee organization, and it will show the funding for that awardee organization only. If the funding amount is made available through subawards to other organizations, that's not listed in reporter. You won't see that here. Those are really handled in a separate way. And so if there's a situation where, in this example here, that where Washington University is the awardee organization, but maybe some of this funding is going to someone else through subawards, you're not going to see that in reporter. That's not reflected here. So hopefully that was helpful at trying to answer the different questions.
I think that was helpful. One of the things that, that awards by location tool might be something in RePORT that people want to explore if they're interested in finding information about their institution specifically, or comparing themselves to other institutions and that kind of thing. Can you talk about the data book and the breakout of success rates based on mechanisms?
Sure. So success rates. And before I go into data book, I also want to mention that on RePORT, there is a dedicated page for reports on success rates. There's information certainly available in the data book, and I'll jump over there in a minute, but I also just wanted to point out that if you are interested in success rates that are broken down in a number of different ways, by institute or center, by activity code, by submission number, there's a lot of reports here, so you can scan that. This is one place to look.
So they're also broken down by we have another question about resubmission and renewals and that kind of thing.
There's a lot available here. So yeah. I would scan the success rate page first. There's also a separate, I don't want to overwhelm you with too many things, but there is a separate thing called the report catalog, which is just a way to search all of the reports that exist in RePORT. So if you want to look for the topic of success rates and broken down by a particular variable like resubmission, you can just search for those and see what exists. But you can always reach out to us if you want to know if something exists. We can help you, tell you if something exists and point you to it, or if it doesn't, we can tell you that as well. But there's the data book as well, which is one place to go for success rates. Data book is really nice. There's so much information there. It's updated on an annual basis. There are a lot of really interesting and useful statistics there. It's organized by different sections. So if you're interested in the success rates topic, you can go to the success and funding rates, and there's a number of different categories. The information here, it's really, quite interactive. You can just hover over an individual fiscal year here and quickly get that count of how many applications and awards there were, what the success rate is, view the data, the summary data behind that, some information about how these statistics were generated. So were there specific questions on the success rate information in the data book, or just?
No, I think that they were looking for by activity code, I think, if they wanted to see the difference between the success rates for an R01 versus an R15 or, something, could they?
We have activity codes in here. Activity code. Yeah, we do have some.
So it looks like using that search box is really helpful when they're trying to look.
Absolutely. There's no need to remember everything that's in here. You can browse by topic or just search for something specifically. And yeah, there's a lot here.
All right. So there is a lot here. We had a question about looking at the STTR there. We had a question about STTRs and which institution they're under, given that, STTR is kind of a partnership between a small business and an academic institution.
The brief answer is going to be whoever is the organization that applied for that. There is one official awardee organization. And I do know for those STTRs, there are often partnerships, but that partner is not going to be listed in RePorter. I think, I want to say the SBA website. There's another place that has more specific information on that, but RePORT is just going to list the official awardee organization for any type of award.
Sounds good. Following up on a previous question, you had said that you can see the total amount by year. Is there anywhere that it shows the total amount that's going to be promised across the project?
Promised, no. We only look backwards because until an award's issued, you don't know exactly what's going to be in there. But let me go back to my.
How about total amount awarded to date?
Yeah, so to date, you can look at that. And here I'm just going to click on an example. This is a year 4 award, so I know there were previous versions of it. So if you're looking at an award for a project, we do have a history section of this page, and this will show for that project, the same activity code, IC, and serial number, all of the previous awards. And at the top here, it gives you total project funding amount for these projects. And so this is the award amount to date. That's one easy way to get that information.
Right. So I think why people are asking this question is for the other support documents. They're looking for, what's the total going to be over that 5-year period. And so there's probably better places for them to get that information.
Yeah, you'll have to look at internally at maybe what's available within Commons or made available in the grant award, but that's not something that's out here
Right.
Until it's been awarded. It won't be on Reporter.
Here's a question that's useful. So Reporter has this nice news and more feature, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does that become populated?
We have several sources that populate this news and more tab, and I'm just showing you how you can get to that. For any search, you can click on that news and more tab and see them. And we have some automated feeds that bring this information in. One is AAAS's Eureka Alert. Another is Newswise, and then certain institutes and centers have their own feeds where they're populating this information. And the way it works is if in any of these sources, a grant number was listed that is a valid grant number in Reporter, and NIH is acknowledged as the funder, then that's what we need to bring it over to Reporter and have it show up here. So if institutions are interested in making sure their press releases are available here, then, depending on who you're working with for those press releases, if you are putting them in something like Eureka Alert, just make sure that the grant number is populated there. And if you have specific questions about, what those fields are, we're happy to tell you what we're looking at, which fields those are.
All right, we've got a question about whether we show awards by study sections, like success rates by study sections. And the answer would probably be we don't by study section, right?
Yeah, by individual study section, I don't think so.
But you can see which study section and a grant award the application went to, which can be useful as you're potentially thinking about requesting particular or suggesting particular study sections on your application. Yeah. And it is 2:44, and so I don't know that we have. I don't know that we have time for another question. And yes, our fiscal years are from. Can you tell us when the fiscal years are from?
Yes, so the fiscal year is from October 1st through September 30th. And how that relates to, Reporter and funding is if appropriations for that fiscal year were used to make the award. It's not necessarily that the award is active in a particular period of time. It's really all about the money, which year that money comes from. But those are the dates for the fiscal year calendar.
So I have to say, thank you so much, Cindy. This has been super helpful. I learned something from you every time I listen to this presentation. Thank you for all the questions. If you have more questions, you have places on the screen that you can reach out to get answers to. Lots of general stuff, people who are at the booths can help you with this because NIH staff are kind of in there playing a lot. It's not the tools that we use to oversee our grants, but there are tools that we also appreciate. Your feedback is really very valuable to us. And so on the page that you were on when you launched to get into this session, if you want to provide some feedback on this, that would be great. We also love feedback on the entire conference. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the conference.